This is Bluebook Digital SAT 5 Math Module 2. A right triangle has legs with lengths of 11 centimeters and 9 centimeters. What is the length of the triangle's hypotenuse in centimeters? Well, this is, of course, Pythagorean. So the legs of 9 and 11. And the hypotenuse is c as in cat. It would be 9 squared plus 11 squared is c squared. 81 plus 121 is c squared. So c squared is 202. So the answer is the root of 202. For the linear function h, the graph of y equals h of x in the xy plane passes through the points 721 and 925. Which equation defines h? So if you go through any 2 points, you can find the equation of that line. So m, which is the slope, is the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's, which here would be 21 minus 25 over 7 minus 9, which is negative 4 over negative 2, which is 2. So then in y equals mx plus b in slope-intercept form, I'm going to use 7 comma 21 as x and y respectively. So 21 is 2 times 7 plus b. 21 is 14 plus b. B is 7. So the actual general equation is y equals 2x plus 7. Company that produces socks wants to estimate the percent of socks produced in a typical week that are defective. A random sample of 310 socks produced in a certain week were inspected. Based on the sample, it is estimated that 12% of all socks produced by the company in this week are defective, with an associated margin of error of 3.62%. So that means that the percent that are actually defective is probably in the zone from 12 plus 3.62 to 12 minus 3.62, which is what, 15.62 and 8.38. Based on the estimate and associated margin of error, which the following is the most appropriate conclusion about all socks produced by the company during this week? So 3.62% of the socks are defective. No, it is plausible that between that and that of the socks are defective. Yeah, that's the answer. That's the definition of the margin of error for a predicted value. 12% of, no. And then it's plausible that more than, no, that's outside of the given pocket. A truck can haul a maximum weight of 5,630 pounds. During one trip, the truck will be used to haul a 190-pound piece of equipment as well as several crates. Okay? Some of these crates weigh 25 pounds each, and the others weigh 62 pounds each. Which inequality represents the possible combinations of the number of 25-pound crates X and the number of 62-pound crates Y the truck can haul during one trip if only the piece of equipment and the crates are being hauled? So it's the crate, which is 190, plus 25 times X, plus 62 times Y, altogether has to be less than or equal to 5,630. But that's not an answer choice. So what they do is they subtract the 190 from both sides, and they write it as this being, 5,440, right? Is less than or equal to, yes. What is the solution to the given system of equations? This is a Desmos question. In fact, you should be able to just type it in literally as it's written and see the solution on the screen. Yeah, the intersection is -2, -5. What is the range of the 7 scores shown? Again, you can easily do this on Desmos. In fact, you can type in the word range. Now, it would be helpful, of course, to understand how to do it by hand and conceptually. Well, actually, now that I think about it, in this case, they're in order, so you could almost just look at it and say it, but What is the range of the 7 scores shown? Well, these are listed in order. So you basically just have to know the definition of the word range, which is the difference between the highest and the lowest, which is what? 29, right? 29 is the gap from, let me just confirm my head arithmetic, right? Yeah. Two customers purchased the same kinds of bread and eggs at a store. The first customer paid $12.45 for 1 loaf of bread and 2 dozen eggs. The second customer paid $19.42 for 4 loaves of bread and 1 dozen eggs. What's the cost in dollars of 1 dozen eggs? So I'm going to write the system, right? So I'm going to write B plus 2E, right, for bread and eggs respectively being $12.45. And then 4B plus E being $19.42. Now, if you want to solve for E as an egg, you want to eliminate the B's. So I'm going to quadruple the top expression and write this as 4B plus 8E equals, what's 4 times 12.45? 49.8. And then recopy the bottom one the way we already had it. And then subtract the entire bottom expression from the top expression. So these disappear, leaves you with 7E equals, and this is now taking away 1942 is 30.38. And then dividing that by 7 is 434. If the given equations are graphed of the xy plane, at how many points do the graphs of the equations intersect? Again, this is simply looking at the picture on Desmos. So y equals 18, and then y equals, now you have to copy it very carefully with the correct syntax, -3 times quantity x minus 18 squared plus 15. And looking at this on Zoom, yeah, and if you zoom out, you see that the parabola never touches the line. So the answer is just 0. A solution to the given system of equations is x, y. What is the greatest possible value of x? A solution to that system. Again, I feel like this is just a Desmos question. You should be able to see the pictures very clearly here. So y equals x plus 9 is the line, and then the quadratic x squared plus 16x plus 63. Yeah. Now, a solution, what is the greatest possible? So the x values that make this true are -9 and -6. And -6 is the greatest. So -6 is the answer. In the xy plane, line P has a slope of -5/3 and an x-intercept of -6, 0. What is the y-coordinate of the y-intercept of line P? So you could say it goes through -6, 0, and slope -5/3, which means you can find its general equation. Anytime that you know any 2 points, or a point and a slope, you can find the equation of the line. So I'm going to put it in slope-intercept form. So 0 equals -5/3 times -6 plus b. 0 equals 30/3 plus b. 0 equals 10 plus b. So b is -10. So the general equation of the line is -5/3 x minus 10, which means that the y-coordinate of the y-intercept is -10. How many solutions does that have? Well, I'm just going to type this into Desmos the way it's written. Now, you have to understand the form in which it spits out the answer or potentially the lack of answers if you type it this way. It's only going to show you a vertical line. Yeah, a vertical line at the solution. So the solution is x equals 0, right? And that's the only solution, which makes sense. So 12 times -3 is the same as -3 times 12, yeah. So 0 is the solution, which makes the answer exactly 1. Kailani used fabric measuring 5 yards in length to make each suit for a men's choir. The relationship between the number of suits that Kailani made X and the total length of fabric that she purchased Y in yards is represented by the equation that. What is the best interpretation of 6 in this context? 5 yards in length to make each suit. Y minus 5X equals 6. So suppose for a second she made 7 suits. It would be Y minus 35 is 6. So Y itself was 41 to start with. And I think what they're saying is 6 is the remainder, right? 6 is the extra that you can't use. Or 6 is what's left over. So made 6 suits, no. Purchased a total of 6 yards of fabric, no. Use a total of 6 yards of fabric to make, no. Oh yeah. 6 yards more fabric than she used, yeah, of course. Which quadratic equation has no real solutions? Well, if you understand what that means visually for a parabola, you can just graph them and look at them one at a time on Desmos. Let's just talk through it one at a time. Oh, terrible syntax here, sorry. Plus 14x minus 49. And get rid of that, yeah. And this has 2 real solutions, right? You can see that the 2 x-intercepts are 2 point something and negative 16 point something. So it's not that, okay? And let's just adjust them efficiently here to be making that a negative and that a positive. That looks like it has 1 real solution because it hits at positive 7. So it's not that either. And then affixing a 5 out front and making this a negative. No, that again has 2 real solutions. And then making this a positive. Yeah, that has no real solutions because it never crosses the x-axis. Function f is defined by the given equation. The equation can be rewritten as f of x equals quantity 1 plus p over 100 to the x, where p is a constant. Which of the following is closest to the value of p? I might be inclined to think of this by example. So for lack of a better plan, let me imagine that x itself was the number 8. So if f of 8 is 1.84 to the 8 over 4, that's the same as 1.84 squared. Let me get an actual number for that. 3.39, I'm going to say. And then that's 1 plus quantity p over 100 to the 8th power equaling this. And let me work backwards and actually just solve algebraically from here and see which one is closest. So then you'd be the 8th root of this. So I can take the number I have in Desmos and then wrap this. Actually, I meant to put the parens, yeah, well, to say like that, and then go to the 1/8 power to take the 8th root. So now I'm looking at 1.165. So 1 plus p over 100 equals 1.165. Then I'm going to subtract the 1, so p over 100 equals 0.165. And then multiply both sides by 100, yeah, and you get something like 16.5. So it must be A is an apple. You could have also accomplished that with a slider, now that I think about it, which might have been better. So f of x equals 1.84 to the x divided by 4. And then I'm going to write it as g of x equals quantity 1 plus p over, yes, an add slider for p as in Paul, quantity over 100 to the x. And now, which makes these most equivalent? Of course, you have to adjust the domain for the possible values of p. So let's go from 0 to 20. Now, I know the answer is close to 16, but make this step a 1. And then you can see, there you go, yeah. So if you get it to about 16, they're almost the same curve. Yeah, that's really not that helpful of a way of doing it. So I think that the numerical example way is probably the most efficient in the interest of time. Okay, in the given system of equations, P is a constant if the system has no solution. So a system of two equations has no solution if they are parallel but not the same line. So now this is written in a strange way because you're expecting x and y, but it's not. So I'm going to write as PW is 7r plus 6. And now for the bottom one, I'm going to put the w's on one side and the straight numbers on the other side. So I'm going to get, let's see. Well, let me write it a step at a time. So I'm going to get 10w on the right-hand side and then 7r minus 11. So now if this and this is the system I'm working with. Now I'm going to solve them both for w by itself. So w is 7 over p r plus 6 over p. And then w is 7 over 10 r minus 11 over 10. If this and this is a linear system with no solution, then they must have the same slope. So this must be this, which of course means that p is in Polish is 10. The graph of y equals 2x squared plus bx plus c is shown, where b and c are constants. What is the value of bc? So it helps to know that in any quadratic, the axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. Negative b over 2a. So in this case, the axis of symmetry is obviously just x equals negative 1. So negative 1 is negative b over 2 times 2. So negative b is negative 4. So b itself is 4. So now you have the function 2x squared plus 4x plus c. Now there's a couple ways you could find c as in cat, but I'm going to say that this goes through, let's see, well, 0 comma negative 6, right? So negative 6 is 2 times 0 squared plus 4 times 0 plus c. So negative 6 is c. So the general equation is 2x squared plus 4x plus, minus 6. So b is 4 and c is negative 6, which makes the product negative 24. The graph of the linear function y equals f of x plus 19 is shown. If c and d are positive constants, which equation could define f? So it's showing you the picture of the one that's been moved up 19 from the thing in question. So in just very ballpark terms, although you could find the actual exact equation if you wanted to, I don't think that's necessary, but just very ballpark terms, you would shift down 19 to get the original. So this, instead of being 0, 3, this would be 0, negative 16. So this is f of x. So it has a negative slope and a negative y-intercept. So for example, it could have been something like y equals, is it negative 10x minus 16? It's something like that. So it's negative, negative. So if c and d are positive, that must just be answer choice A, right? Because that's the same as negative cx minus d. In the figure shown, AB is radical 34, AC is 3, and CE is 21. Well, this is about proportional triangles, right? Similar triangles. The small triangle that's inside of the big picture has the same proportion of sides. I'm going to draw it inside and then maybe also draw it outside as needed. So that's a right angle, that's a right angle. AB is radical 34. AC is 3. CE is 21. So if this is a 21, that means that AE is 24. So in general, to go from a side of the small triangle to a side of the large triangle, you just multiply by 8. What is the area in square units of triangle ADE? Okay, so first you have to go Pythagorean to find this side right here. So I'm going to write that as 3 squared plus 3 squared plus the thing you're looking for squared, which I'm going to call lowercase a, because lowercase a is across from capital A. 3 squared plus a squared is root 34 squared. So 9 plus a squared is 34. A squared is 25. So a comes out to be 5. Okay, so if a is 5, then remember you multiply by 8, right? You octuple to get the long side. So from 3 to 24 is times 8, and then from 5 to, it would be 40, right? If you octupled. So then the area of triangle ADE is 1/2 times 24 times 40, which is 12 times 40 is 480. The result of increasing the quantity x by 400% is 60. What is the value of x? Well, a lot of people get deceived by this. So increasing by 400% is you add 400% of the thing to itself. So increasing by 400% is actually multiplying by 5. So 5x is 60, which makes the original 12. The xy plane, a circle with center C with coordinates hk, point A and B lie on the circle. A has coordinates h plus 1, k plus root 102, and ACB is a right angle. Okay, this is an advanced question. I'm going to draw this in quadrant 1 entirely for the sake of simplicity. So let's say that it has center HK, and then suppose the circle just looks like this. I'm going to keep everything in quadrant, well, just as I say it, I don't draw it perfectly. Let's see. Everything in quadrant 1. Sure. Okay. And then h plus 1, k plus root 102 is on the circle. So you go 1 to the right and radical 2 up. Okay? And then ACB is a right angle like this. Point A. So if that's point A, this is this, and ACB is a right angle. I see what's happening here. Okay, this is an advanced question. But first of all, you can find the radius. Because, of course, the radius is the distance from the center to point A. So I'm going to make that a right triangle calculation for the distance calculation. So you go right by 1 and up by radical 102. So it would have been 1 squared plus root 102 squared is the radius squared. So 1 plus 102 is the radius squared. So the radius is the square root of 103. Okay, so if this is radical 103, then of course this is also radical 103, and they're saying that that's a right angle, and then they're asking how far it is in a straight line from here to here. So now let me redraw the triangle. It's a right isosceles triangle, where the short sides are root 103 and root 103. And then, of course, as I'll show you in the reference card, a right isosceles, otherwise known as a 45-45-90, to go from the side length to the hypotenuse length, you multiply by radical 2. So radical 103 times radical 2 is radical 206. For an electric field passing through a flat surface perpendicular to it, the electric flux of the electric field through the surface is the product of the electric field strength and the area of the surface. I'm going to try to write that in words. The flux is the product of the field strength. I'm just going to write this in words. I know they might give separate variables for it later, but flux is field strength times area of surface. A certain flat surface consists of two adjacent squares where the side length in meters of the larger square is 3 times the side length in meters of the smaller square. Okay? As in the surface looks like this, right? This is a 3x, this is a 3x, and an x, and an x. Okay? An electric field with strength 29 volts per meter passes uniformly through the surface, which is perpendicular to the electric field. If the total electric flux of the electric field to the surface is that, what is the electric flux in voltmeters of the electric field through the larger square? So I think, let me try to apply the numbers that they're giving. The strength is 29. So they're saying the instance of this being applied is the strength is 29, and you get that this is this out here when you do 29 times the area of the surface. Now, the area of the surface is the combined areas of the two squares, which is the 9x squared and the x squared. So this is 10x squared. Now, I bet you can solve this for x squared. So let's see. 4640 divided by 29. Yeah, is 160. Yeah, you know you're on the right track when it works out to nice, neat numbers. 160 is 10x squared. So 16 is x squared. So x itself is 4. Okay, which means the actual dimensions as numbers is just a 12 and a 12 and a 4 and a 4. Then the question is, what is the electric flux in voltmeters of the electric field through the larger square? So if the field strength was still 29, then the thing you're looking for would be 29 times the area of just the larger square, which is just 144, right? So 29 times 144 should be the answer. Yeah, 4176. I guess now that I think about it, you could have also said that it would be the proportion. It would have just been 9 parts out of 10 of 4640, which of course should give you the same thing, right? What's 9 parts out of 10 of 4640? Well, I wrote that terribly, but hold on. 9 parts out of 10 times 4640 is, 4176 is the answer. Scatterplot shows the relationship between two variables x and y for dataset E. A line of best fit is shown. Dataset F is created by multiplying the y-coordinate of each data point from dataset E by 3.9. Multiplying the y-coordinate by 3.9. So think about what happens to a line if you multiply its y-coordinate by 3.9. Well, let's just do a simpler example, right? I'm going to make up a much more obvious, straightforward line. Suppose it was y equals 1/3 x plus 5. And then I multiplied the y-coordinate by 3.9. So then in the new line, it would be 3.9 times, but of course, the equation itself effectively is the y-coordinate. So it would be this, which means you would multiply the slope by 3.9 and the y-intercept by 3.9. So the new line would be a much steeper slope and a y-intercept that's 3.9 times as much. Okay, now normally for the scatter plot, it goes through a couple of grid points. For my money, in the original here, it goes through, or very, very close to going through, 12, 30 and 18, 40. Now, let's use one of the advanced features, the clever things that Desmos can do for this. So you can make a table on Desmos and get it to do the calculation for you. If I give it a table with 12, 30, and 18, 40, I can tell it to do linear regression by hitting this. Yeah. So now it gives me 1.67x plus 10. I'm just rounding it to that. So this is this. Now, if you multiply by 3.9, so 3.9 times this entire thing. Actually, now that I think about it, if you had left this as 5/3, it actually makes it well, I suppose it doesn't really matter, but let me multiply that by, so 1.67 times 3.9 gives you 6.513. So 6.51x plus 39. It should be something like this, right? Which the following could be an equation of the line of best fit for set F. I think what they're saying is that there's only one of these that's in the right ballpark. So you have to triple the y-intercept, which means it's not just the 12. The 12 is about what it was originally. And then you also have to triple the slope. So it must be answer choice A. That's the only one that's in the right realm.